This is Jasper Wax, question 1 of the critical reflection. How does your product use or challenge conventions, and how does it represent social groups or issues? So first of all, I'm going to talk about camera work in our thriller opening, and I think we do this quite well. So for example, we start with an establishing shot, which is the bird's eye drone shot of the car driving on the driveway. And to open, I think that's a really good shot because it kind of highlights that the person is on a journey kind of somewhere, and the music is kind of highlighting that this journey clearly is going to bring the character trouble and difficulty. And then through the middle of our piece, there's a lot of kind of slow and continuous shots where the camera's following the person or it's panning to follow the person. And I think these are really important in a thriller as they help create the suspense. If you keep it slow and continuous, it kind of makes the audience feel uncomfortable. And then I think one of the more important clips at the end is we end with the extreme close-up of when Red is on the phone and the line, "So you believe me now?" And I think that's really important as it kind of suggests that camera work with that line in combination show there's obviously a situation which is really bad, and that's the only way to connote it, through that really close-up camera, bringing more uncomfort to the viewer, really. So I think in terms of camera work, we were quite conventional with what we filmed. A lot of thrillers would have a lot of fast-paced cuts, but I thought doing that would require a high production level, which as a A-level piece we couldn't afford. So it had to be kind of slow and continuous, otherwise it would have looked rushed and uncomfortable. So yeah, that's it for camera work. Our use of sound was actually quite unconventional. We decided to use a lot of non-diegetic sound, which was the soundtrack played on top, which was listed in the soundtrack analysis blogger post. And we actually did this because after seeing our first draft and how that worked, we thought that the music was kind of providing more suspense than anything else in the piece, and our camera work wasn't doing as much as we'd hoped. So we decided to keep that in for the final draft and the final version. And I think personally that worked in our favour, because using this sound as well as some speech and some dialogue is important, because it kind of can only add to the suspense, really. And even though some existing thrillers wouldn't have this, I think it's something which could be kind of important in the future of thrillers, really. And then a lot of our diegetic sounds, so the kind of crunching of the stones and the speech, I think we put quite loud in terms of mixing, and I think that's really important because it kind of makes it more uncomfortable. For example, in the scene where we are following Maddie walking into the house, and we can just only hear those stones crunching, it kind of makes you feel that something's a bit odd here. Like, what the audience is kind of questioning, why are we hearing this so loud? And I think that can only also bring suspense to the thriller. So personally, I think the sound was quite unconventional, but I did approve of it, and I think it was the right thing to do given the circumstances and what we were trying to show in our piece. The editing in our piece I found was very conventional, really. So the slow continuity of how it starts, and then it slowly speeds up towards the end, which kind of shows the accelerating danger within the piece. And in editing, for example, we used little things like a vignette. We added that to most clips, because that black border and that kind of shadow can kind of help make you feel uncomfortable, really, as it's darker. And it's just conventional. We've seen it in a lot of thrillers over time. It's just slight, but it can make a difference if you add it to every clip, and a difference is definitely noticeable. And colour-wise, we did a lot of colour grading actually in the last process of our editing, in order to kind of bring out all the best colours in our piece. And I think we've done that really well. I think watching through it, like some highlights for me is the first clip, the drone over the top. I think the colour is just brilliant. The trees and everything. There's just such a wide range of greens and other colours, and I think it just looks perfect. And you can just see the rose standing out so much against the other colours, really. And I think it's just perfect. And the black car as well. As a scene, or as a shot, that colour in there is perfect. And then our titles, I think, were actually quite unconventional. We decided to use them because we thought they looked right and they looked really fancy for our piece, which I think is the right thing, to be honest. And then we decided to kind of avoid titles, so we didn't say before cinematographer or editor or any of that, because we didn't want to waste space, even though it was unconventional for us to do that. We thought doing that would only waste space on the screen and take away from our storyline. And we didn't want that happening, as we wanted to ensure that we fill the criteria of it being an opening and not a movie. So we just had to make sure the storyline could be shown and nothing could take it away. like that, for example. And there were some other like transitions and zooms that we used. So for example, when the door's closing, we kind of have that uncomfortable short zoom in on the door, which kind of makes the audience think, what's happening here? It must be something really weird, because otherwise that wouldn't be happening. And I think those slight zooms and turns you've got when she's walking up the stairs, I think they were really good in terms of just bringing more suspense and more confusion to the storyline, really. And that was in the editing process as well, which I thought was something which really highlighted our piece. And we noticed it in the first draft, it was just perfect. So we decided to keep that in there, and we kind of played around with a few more, and we added a couple and just made sure that they were kind of the right speed and they matched the music, really. So yeah, that was it for editing. I think our product represented social groups or issues in an interesting way, actually, because we did decide to use a story of knife crime in our piece, and I think that was actually really important and influential to viewers, because, for example, we have the knife being shown and Maddie instantly being, this is horrible, get me out of here. That kind of attitude towards knives, I think, is important to show in our society nowadays, with the growing knife crime in areas in London, which is really present among teenage boys, and they are carrying them a lot more. So I think kind of showing them in this light is only beneficial to society, really. And I think that must kind of be shown in other short films and other things like this in the future, because the media is really the best way to change things in our society. And I think if stories like Blue Story, which is a movie released recently about a gang war, if those stories and things can get popular enough to have an influence on the amount of knives and gang war in our world, really, it could just be very influential, and it'll be the only way to really stop them. So I think in terms of that, targeting social groups, or the main social issue, was really important that we did that. Overall, I was pleased with the way we challenged conventions, and I think it's important to sometimes challenge conventions, as repetition and difference is the only way to really change these conventions. So if we can keep repeating and kind of tweaking the thriller genre, that will kind of shape it in the future, which I think it will evolve over time. And I think challenging conventions is important, and sometimes using them is also important, because some conventions like thrillers are really important, like sound. If you don't use this kind of strings music to create suspense, there's not really other music that can do it, because that music is kind of now associated with the genre. So I was generally very pleased with how we did that, and I think there could have been some improvements which we will make for next year's project in terms of conventional for music videos. But for now, as our first try, I think we did as best we could, and I was very pleased with our outcome. So yeah, that's it for this question.